until yesterday when I decided to basically start all over again. And so today I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about my personal history, because I do think that part of the reason why we are here is because also my history kind of framed a lot of how the company has been brought up to. That wasn't the reaction I was expecting.
Es Simón.
No, that's me. That's me and my sister. This picture was taken about 45 years ago, almost exactly 45 years ago in Brazil. That was my first encounter with a coffee tree. I didn't know it back then that I would spend my life working in coffee. Actually, during most of my youth years, I actually didn't want to work in coffee. As most of you know, my father used to work with the FNC, the National Coffee Federation in Colombia, as a scientist, and he headed the National Coffee Research Center for about 30 years. And I did spend a lot of my, especially my teenage years at Cine Cafe, working at the labs and getting to know coffee. But since I was, I think, 11 years old, I wanted to be a banker. That was my dream job. I wanted to be a banker. Partly influenced by two reasons. One, the fact that I was named Alejandro because my great-grandfather was also named Alejandro, and he was a banker. So I had that in my mind, like I had to follow his steps. But also because when I was living in the States between 8 and 11 years old, one of my favorite TV shows was Family Ties. And if you remember that show, one of the actors, Michael J. Fox, his name was Alex P. Keaton, and he wanted to be a banker. So Alejandro, there was that familiarity with the name and the job. And I did go into study economics, and then I became a banker. I actually fulfilled my dream very early on in my life. When I was 22 years old, I was already working as investment banker in Colombia first, and then I got the chance and the opportunity to go work in London and New York. And I was very happy for a few years. And all of a sudden, things changed, and I decided to quit banking. That was exactly 20 years ago. Around this time, 20 years ago, I quit banking. And my dream was then going to do an MBA. I actually got accepted to London Business School, and I was supposed to start my MBA in September 2002. I went during that time between December 2001 and September 2002. I was supposed to go back to Colombia, have some fun, just enjoy my sabbatical, and then start my MBA in September. But at the time, I had already invested in Carabela. My idea was not to work at Carabela. I wanted to be a banker, and I enjoyed being a banker. But I invested in Carabela because Giancarlo invited me to become a partner in the company. But I wasn't planning on working in the company. And at the time, we had done a few work on just defining the business plan of the coffee. That's precisely why I entered the company, because Giancarlo knew that my dad worked in coffee. And so he said, you should know something about it. And no, I didn't know.
To prove it.
I didn't know a thing about coffee. I knew it was a fruit. I knew you had to process it, but I didn't know anything about the trading of coffee. So during that time, in between the summer of 2001 and the winter of 2001, we actually did a lot of work on defining what kind of coffee we were going to work in Carabela. At the time, it was Firmax. And so one of the things that we realized, talking to a few roasters back then, was that we had an image that Colombian coffee was the best coffee in the world. That's how we were brought up, thinking in Colombia that Colombian coffee was the richest, best coffee in the world. And when we talked to those roasters, they said it used to be the best coffee in the world, but it's no longer the best coffee in the world. And one of the reasons for that is that the quality, of course, is not, they offer you some really good coffee, and then when it lands, it's a different thing. So they didn't go through with their promise, their value promise. They would always show you something good and deliver something bad. And the other complaint was consistency. So we decided to focus on the niche market of quality, and we actually hired 2 people to work with us in Colombia. And so when I came back to Colombia, I rented a flat, and it was a huge flat. So I said, why don't we put the office in one of the bedrooms? I was living on my own in a 3-bedroom flat. I was single, and I actually wanted the flat to do a lot of parties, but it ended up being the office. And it was good that we did that, because the 2 people that we had employed were useless. They would arrive to the office at 10 in the morning, go home at 1, have lunch, come back at 3, and by 5, they were gone. And so I remember calling Giancarlo and saying, this is not going to work. Especially when you're starting a company, you want the people to be working in the company to be really engaged and passionate and working hard to fulfill the mission of the company. And these guys were not bringing any business, and they were not even doing their part to help us succeed. So come April, I've just fired our 2 employees, and guess what? Somebody's got to do the job. And I was the only one in Colombia because Giancarlo was in London. So it became my responsibility to start sourcing coffee. And it was very interesting because I didn't know anything. I actually didn't know anything about coffee. I knew that, of course, it was a fruit, but I didn't know anything about trading coffee. We had an idea. We were pretty sure that there was a market for it because we had talked to roasters about their wants and their needs. But we didn't know how to do it. And so my first instinct was, let's talk to my dad and go see some farmers. And the first thing that occurred to me is, let's go see the big farmers in Colombia. There's plenty of big farmers, and surely my dad knew some of them, and he did. So he introduced me to a few farmers. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to cup either. If you're going to do quality coffee, you need to learn how to cup. So I went and did a cupping course at Sunny Cafe. I was very lucky because they were actually doing cupping courses in Sunny Cafe at the time, and I had pretty clear access to Sunny Cafe because my dad was the director. And one of the first coffees I cupped, and I mentioned this to Sam yesterday, was an Ethiopian Yirgacheffe. And for anybody that has cupped coffee, I think Yirgacheffe coffee is that coffee that really ignites a passion for coffee. But to the time, I thought I had terrible taste. I didn't eat lots of things. I was very picky with my food. I'm still are, but I eat more things than I used to eat before. And when I drank that coffee for the first time, that said, oh, I can actually taste coffee. I can be very good about this, and this is actually something that ignites lots of flavors and ideas and passion. So I did go to visit a few farms. I didn't know how to cup, but I asked people to help us cup. And everything that we were cupping was terrible. There was nothing good. So I got to the moment that I got really frustrated, and I remember telling Giancarlo, what are we going to do? Because we're not finding what the product that we are looking for. And we know there is a market, but we're not finding it. And they were right. There is no good quality coffee in Colombia, and that's impossible. That can't happen. So we decided to go to the SEA show in Anaheim, California in May 2002. And funny enough, there in that place, we were the only ones selling Colombian coffee. The FNC booth was deserted. There was nobody from the FNC at the show, even though this was a very important trade show. There was only a woman serving coffee. That's it. And a map of Colombia. And a few tables. So, perfect. That was our office for the next 3 days. The FNC booth became our office. And it also became a place where we actually found our first coffee supplier. It was a man named Bonifacio Ortiz from Oparapahuila, a place that I'd never heard in my life. I've never been in Huila in my whole life, even though I was 25, 26 years old. Never been in Huila. Never knew that there was a place that called Oparapa. And this gentleman, a coffee farmer from Huila, basically came up to us and said, I have what you're looking for. Very confident. He actually gave us a book with information about the coffee association that he was the president of, and he said, "I have the coffee, and I will send you some samples when I return to Colombia." And he did, which was surprising as well, because I never thought that somebody from Huila, a coffee farmer from Huila, would actually come through with his promises. And he did send his sample, and we cupped it, and it was really good. But I didn't believe it was too good to be true. This small farmer from Huila, Huila wasn't known for coffee. You usually knew that Antioquia or Caldas were the good regions, not Huila. And so I called him and said, "Can you send me another sample, just to make sure?" And it turned out the second sample was even better. And back in Anaheim, when we were sitting at the FNC booth, a guy comes in and says, "Are you the Starbucks guys?" I'm like, "Do we look like the Starbucks guys?" I was much younger, so and we didn't look anything like Starbucks guys.
Maybe if you were baristas.
And so he asked us, what are you doing? And so we told him what we were trying to do, and we never had brochures, but we made a CD-ROM back then. CD-ROMs were a thing. With our presentation, and it was a pretty cool presentation because it was a Java presentation, so it was an interactive presentation with a map of Colombia that you would click and you would find information about the coffees that we were supposedly offering. We didn't have anything to offer, but we had something to show. And so we gave him our cards and we gave him the CD, and he said, "Well, when you have some samples, I would be very interested in trying them." So once we got that second sample, I told Giancarlo, "Let's send this sample to this guy." And we did. That was June 2002. About 20 days later, the guy comes back to us and says, "I'm interested in your coffee." So we said, "Okay, how much coffee are you interested?" 4 containers. "Your coffee is really good. I have a customer for it. I want to 4 containers." And we said, "Well, okay, send me a price." And so we said, "Okay, let's send this guy a price." The coffee market back then was 40 cents a pound. It was one of the lowest, if not the lowest, number. And it's 240 today. So we offered the guy 135 a pound when the market was 40 cents. And we basically offered that number because the cooperative, the association that this guy was president of, they were selling fair trade coffee, which the price was $1.19. So we said we can offer a 15-cent premium, and guess what? The 15 cents was what we were going to make. So at least we were offered the same price that they were getting, and we could make some money out of it. And he comes back and says, "Deal. I want the 4 containers." We had no experience, we had no dry mill, we had no money to buy this coffee. But what we did have was a good idea. And we had found what people were looking for. By chance. Probably if we had never been to Anaheim, we wouldn't be sitting here. Probably if we had never fired those 2 employees, we hadn't been sitting here. But that story just tells you a lot about what Caravella is today. We didn't start with money, we didn't start with knowledge, we didn't start with lots of things that lots of companies start with today. But we did have one big thing with us, a good idea, and the knowledge that there was a market for that product. And so the challenges began. We had to find a way to make sure that we were signing that contract and we could fulfill it. And this was July 2002. And our first container, we were scheduled to ship it in November 2002. So we had a few months, five months more or less, to get our act together. So I started looking for an exporter, because we didn't have we were supposed to be an importer. We were not supposed to be an exporter. We didn't want, our business plan didn't say exporting coffee. Our business plan said importing coffee to the UK. And we had just sold 4 containers, not to the UK, to the US. So I called a few friends of my dad, and they all said, no, we won't export your coffee. Finally, I called another one, and he said, you know what? You don't need me. You can actually get your own coffee license, export license, because they just recently changed the regulations. But that involved setting up a company in Colombia. We had a company in the UK, but we never intended to have a company in Colombia. Remember, I was going to go back in September to London. And so we decided to set up the company. We had no money. We had the company very much had a total capital of $20,000, which we had already spent all that money in lots of other things. And so we basically decided to set up the company with 10 million pesos, which is about $3,000 or less of today's money. But we still didn't have the money. Setting up a company was the easy part. We didn't have the money to pay for the coffee because, as you know, in Colombia you have to pay the coffee up front. Mm-hmm. Nobody will give you coffee and give you net 30 terms to pay for the coffee. You first pay for the coffee and then you get it. So one thing I did have was, I remember I have a nice suitcase with, so I decided, and PowerPoint skills as well, from my banking years. So I said, how can we get somebody to help us finance the coffee? One of the things I learned at banking is that you don't need to have the money. You need to find somebody to give you the money, to lend you the money. So we need to find somebody to lend us the money. And I told Bonifacio, why don't we offer the deal to the cooperative, the Huila cooperative? And he said, yes, I'm a member of the cooperative, the board of directors. I can get you an appointment with the board so that you can pitch the idea to them. And we did that. I flew to Neiva. Back then, Neiva was out of grounds. Like, you would never go to Neiva because it was very dangerous. I didn't even tell my parents I was going to Neiva because they would have probably said to me, you shouldn't go to Neiva. But I had to. So I went, I took on a plane, went there, made my beautiful PowerPoint presentation. It was probably the first time that these guys had ever seen a PowerPoint presentation. And of course, it was a really beautiful and pretty PowerPoint presentation because I had taken the templates from my banking career. And they said yes. They said, we're willing to finance the coffee, and we're willing also to help you with the milling and the logistics and everything else. And so we had a way out. And so time passes by, November comes, we get the coffee, and I asked them, we needed 25,000 kilos, but I said, just to be sure, why don't you deliver 50,000? So we select the best 25,000. Guess what? Out of the 50,000, only 24,000 hit the quality grade. But that was fair enough. We could do with 24. We had the cooperative had arranged the dry milling in Neiva, close by. And we had scheduled, I remember, November 7 was the schedule for the milling. On November 6, a Friday, the mill calls and says, I'm sorry, we can't open the space for you. We only have space in 2 months. Another hurdle on the road, but I told Saul, the manager, you said you'd take care of this, find another space, because we can't wait 2 months. We have a first shipment needs to happen in November. If we don't deliver on November, the business is gone. He did find a space in Tuluá Valle. You know, for those of you who know Colombia, we had to basically go around the whole country and take the coffee from Neiva to Tuluá, which meant about 15 hours truck drive. And so we load the coffee into the truck, and off it goes, and I go to Bogota, and then on Monday morning I fly to Cali and start the milling. Something that was supposed to take 1 day took 5 days. Again, things functionally happened. We got the 250 bags. I shipped the pre-soup sample. They approved the sample, and off the coffee goes to the port. About 20 days later, the coffee lands. We get a call from the importer. Your coffee is rejected. But it wasn't rejected because of cup quality reasons. It was rejected because we didn't meet the physical defects. So it had too much physical defects and didn't meet the grading and specifications. But funnily enough, the importer says, "Oh, no problem. I probably have a buyer for that coffee. So let me try to see what we can do with that. But you need to ship another container as soon as possible to replace the first one." The second one was even harder to mill, because now we had higher standards to fulfill, and it took 5 days to mill, and we were short 50 bags at the end. So we had to truck another coffee to finish, and then fortunately that coffee was approved, and everything started well. The first container was sold at a 10% discount, and we ended up, instead of selling 4 containers, we ended up selling 5 containers. So, fast forward a few months, and things started to pick up. We were paying farmers twice as much as the market. The market was about 280,000 pesos per carga, and we were paying farmers 600,000 pesos per carga. And all of a sudden, we were inundated with coffee growers wanting to sell coffee to us. And we had to start to build up a team and had to start building the infrastructure to actually be able to grow. And we did grow, back by 2005, we were doing almost 8,000 bags, and by 2017, we were doing almost 20,000 bags. So we were the only game in town. Most of the specialty roasters back then would get to know us by word of mouth, and they would come to Colombia, and it would be an easy sell. And then in 2009, everything changes. The coffee differential in Colombia goes from -10 to 100 in a course of 6 months.
Less. 4 months.
We were selling coffee before that around, I remember, about 150, 165 a pound. And all of a sudden, the cost of coffee is higher than the price that you've sold coffee. And worse off, the farmers that were very happy with what you were paying them no longer are happy with what you're paying them. And the quality goes down. So we go from a fast-growing company to a company that's suddenly declining in sales and losing a ton of money every time we were buying coffee, because we were buying coffee at a higher price than we were selling it. I don't know about Giancarlo, but I remember being very calm at the time. The worst that could happen is we would go broke. We could start over. And we were still young. But we knew that we shouldn't worry too much, because we knew that we still had a good product and a good story to tell. And so we just concentrated on doing our best. And probably the only person here in the room that, apart from Giancarlo and myself, that was part of that story is William. And we had to do some really hard stuff. Like, for example, Giancarlo and I would be paid last. And there were months that we couldn't get paid because we didn't have any money to get paid. But we would pay everybody else their salaries. And we actually told our employees that we need to decrease their salaries. So we asked them, we need to survive this crisis, we need you to help us as well. And everybody did. and the ones that didn't just quit. But Williams is still here, and he remembers that part. And that event really told us that it was not about money. That was not the important part. That we were part of something bigger. That we were part of a company that not only thought about the quality of the coffee and the stories of those farmers, but we also thought about the impact and a longer term view than just a short term view. That incident made us change course of our strategy. That didn't mean that we changed the purpose, because the purpose was just still clear, and thankfully still clear. But it made us change our thinking, because at the time we never thought that we would just first go back to importing, and we never thought that we would do buy coffee from other countries, even though we had lots of roasters saying, why don't you go into other countries and so on. So as a way to survive, we decided to diversify and look for new origins. But we also had to look for a new investor, because we didn't have the money to survive. Thankfully, our bank was very gracious and said, you can stop paying. We'll give you some leeway. But we knew that we had to survive and to make it through the next 5 or 10 years. We needed to find an investor, and we did. We found Danone. They invested in a company that was losing money, but they said very clearly that they were not invested in the company. They were invested in the idea and in us, the people behind it. And that's why we're here. That's why we have now 4 import companies, and we have 7 export companies. And it's been a very difficult 10 years, not in the sense of having lots of issues or lots of challenges, because I think the last 10 years have been way easier than the first 10 years. But it's been challenging in the sense that we're a growing company. So it's no longer the company that Giancarlo and myself can go and talk to everybody. It's no longer the company that we can actually take decisions really fast, because now it's a bigger responsibility as well. We're not just 20 people or 10 people, we're 250 people that depend on us. But it's been interesting in the sense that it's made us realize that the next 10 years is something that we need to think about. And that's why we're here. We're here to really make sure that we can define our next 10 years, and hopefully, as I said in the beginning, hopefully we can become one of those companies that has an infinite lifespan, not just 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, but hopefully 100 years from now. And if there's anything that I'm proud of, is that I feel that we've done a great part in creating a company that has made a significant impact in the lives of many people. And if there's a word that I really like about Caravella, is that we don't say that we're trying to make better coffee. We're not trying to be the best. We're not trying to be the biggest. We're trying to make coffee better. And by having that impact, that purpose that is very clear, is not the number that matters. Is how we can constantly become better at what we do. How can we deliver a better product to our customers? How can we improve the impact and improve the lives of those farmers that deliver coffee to us? But also, more and more importantly, is how can we leave the planet better off? How can we leave a better planet for the future generations? And that should be our focus for the next 10 years, is how we can continuously to marginally improve and become better at what we do, and better and provide a better quality of life to everybody that depends on us, from the farms and the communities where we buy coffee, to the consumers that are actually drinking the coffee, and the baristas, the roasters, and everybody in between. So we've worked really hard with Jackie and Fiona and Giancarlo in the last few months to define what's that strategic focus. We have a very clear purpose. We make coffee better, right? That's our purpose. And as I said, it's not just about the product. That's important because that's what we end up selling, but it could be anything else. Now Mark is thinking about importing cacao, for example. But it's about, better in every sense of the word. And that should be a very clear purpose that we have as a company, as an individuals, and as a team. And purpose is the reason that we do the things that make the company profit. Purpose is what really drives us. That's something that we have to have clear. That's the why, basically. Why we're doing things. And I think that's something that most of all of us, I think, have very clear in mind. Now we need to define the how. The what is something that we won't be talking about this week. The what is not a matter of discussion this week. It's the how we're going to do, and how we're going to deliver on our purpose, right? So we define the strategy based on 4 strategic pillars: product, performance, people, and planet. And performance is something that we added after reading Kat's book. Something very important is we need to perform, to always be better at how we do things, right? The product is what we sell. We need to make sure that the product is constantly improving and that we're constantly evolving as the market improves. We cannot continue thinking that we have the best product and just leave it as it is. We need to constantly improve it because there is competition and there is better ways of doing things. And as well, our people is something that we need to work on as well. Not just us as individuals, but as a team. And I include people. In people, I include the coffee growers as well. They're part of the team. They're a very important part of the team. It's not just the employees that are part of people. The coffee farmers that we work with are a very important part of our people and of our team, right? But increasingly more also is the planet. If you think about it, coffee depends on the climate. If climate changes, things like what happened in Brazil this year, and that's impacting the coffee price, the droughts and the frost, is only going to continue impacting our company more and more, and we'll have bigger and bigger shocks every time. So we need to start thinking about the planet. We've already done our part by becoming carbon neutral in 2020, but we need to continue doing our part to make sure that we're always not only thinking about the people and the performance and the product, but also about the planet, how we leave this planet better off than how we received it. If all these things, product, performance, people, and planet, we deliver on those, the result, and we follow our purpose, what I call the P5, we will deliver the profit. Basically, the profit is not a goal of the company and should never be the goal of this company. If you think about it, we've never really thought too much about money. We didn't start with money. We started with an idea, with a purpose. And that's what brought us to here today. It wasn't the money. The first investor we got was in 2007 and then 2011. So, we've never, and it's been, we've never been one of those companies that goes out and finds $20 million in equity. The 2 rounds of investment that we had were the first one with $150,000 and the second one was $650,000. So it wasn't a lot of money either. But it was that purpose, that clear purpose, that has helped us get here, where we are today. And it's now your job, as the leaders of this company, to take us through the next 10 years. And that's why we're here. We want all you guys to collectively create or shape the next 10 years of this company. Giancarlo and I won't be part of the discussions, because now it's your turn, and hopefully in the next 10 years, somebody else, hopefully one of you, will take the flag of this company and lead it forward for the next 20 or 30 years. So it's your responsibility now to take this coffee forward. Giancarlo and I will remain in the company, and so hopefully Jackie and Fiona. But it's now your turn to lead. And we'll just be here helping you, guide you through the hoops and challenges that will come in the future. So hopefully you will take good care of this company. It is my baby. It is Giancarlo's baby. But as babies, they grow up, they learn, and they go out, start a new life. So now it's your turn to take this baby to the next 20 years. And hopefully you'll be up to the task and do a much better job than I and Giancarlo have done. Thank you.